Your genetics is not your destiny. What dinosaur traits are missing from an ostrich? The ostrich has a toothless beak, but there are mutations that cause teeth and claws to come back to their mouth and limbs. You need to replace the feathers with scales, but there are no feathers on their legs and feet, so you just need to make its whole body like its legs are. We went from a world where almost nobody knew anything about computers to a world where almost all of us are computer geeks for a huge fraction of our day. And I'd like to see that happen with the digital world of biological molecules, too. Making new petroleum should be as simple and straightforward as brewing beer. I like to keep the median age in my lab low because they will indulge me in my dreams. They don't yet think things are impossible. We have the ability to completely change our environment to take on, to inherit, in a certain sense, things far beyond our DNA, and that's inheritable. And we can see evolution in action as our ideas evolve and undergo a kind of Darwinian selection, not at the DNA level. And we can go off into space. Why would you not have a robot that looks like Abraham Lincoln? Why would it look like an erector set? Why use a computer with a punch card when you could use one with a touch pen on the screen? Why a car when you could use a jetpack? It's all too easy to dismiss the future. People confuse what's impossible today with what's impossible tomorrow. The one thing that is bad for society is low diversity. If you become a monoculture, you are at great risk of perishing. Therefore, the recreation of Neanderthals would be mainly a question of societal risk avoidance. At some point, someone will come up with an airtight argument as to why they should have a cloned child. At that point, cloning will be acceptable. I'll drop something for a while, a year or maybe several years, and then pick it up again. I think that's the way successful innovators work. They keep juggling ideas, keeping them in the air, in the back of their mind, to inspire them or enable new recombinations. Genomics is a new idea. Like the PC, it's not obvious at first that anyone would want one. It's like, hey, we've already got one genome. Why do we need more? Very often, as I wander through life, I'll get that old feeling that I've come back from the future and I'm living in the past, and it's a really horrible feeling. Every cell in our body, whether it's a bacterial cell or a human cell, has a genome. You can extract that genome. It's kind of like a linear tape, and you can read it by a variety of methods. Similarly, like a string of letters that you can read, you can also change it. You can write, you can edit it, and then you can put it back in the cell. You can't just hoard your ideas inside the ivory tower. You have to get them out in the world. I like talking and walking. It's more productive than doing just one. People think it's great to be ahead of your time, but it can actually be quite painful. The goal of getting your genome done is not to tell you what you will die from, but it's how to learn how to take action to prevent disease. I always loved computers. It's something inside you. I'm pathologically calm. There's this very interesting and complicated connection between our environment and our genes and the traits that come out of the environment plus genes. And there's huge potential. I mean, we see amazing abilities. Marie Curie, Albert Einstein, all sorts of arts and literature and so forth. These are not typical traits of everybody on Earth. We might want to figure out what are the positive effects of autism, mild cases. Science has very definite faith components, and most religions don't stick to faith. They venture out into making predictions about our physical world. They don't just say it as something that is completely unconnected to us. They say actually it affects a lot. And when they do that, they merge. We know that there is a connection between our feelings and our brain. There's a lot of faith expressed by scientists about science. It's kind of an act of faith that science is a good thing. We don't know that for sure. We may not know that millions of years from now. Clearly, we are a species that is well connected to other species. Whether or not we evolved from them, we are certainly very closely related to them. A series of mutations could change us into all kinds of intermediate species. Whether or not those intermediate species are provably in the past, they could easily be in our future. If you get a personal genome, you should be able to get personal cell lines, stem cell derived from your adult tissues, that allow you to bring together synthetic biology and the sequencing so that you can repair parts of your body as you age or repair things that were inherited disorders. Most people are excited about themselves. Personal genome will deliver for inexpensively something about science to which you can relate. Just like computers are becoming something to which you can relate, it should be even easier to relate to your own biology, and I hope that will be one of the ways we get broader literacy in science. In my lab, we are constantly asking, what's the utility of this pure science that we're doing? Let's nudge it a little bit in a direction where people can connect to it and have some fun and slash, or help some very serious problems they have. I think something very simple that everybody can do is they can participate in medical research as subjects. Personal Genome Project, for example, will take on as many subjects as we can find. Terrorism is not a public health threat relative to cancer and heart disease and malaria, and so forth. It sounds a little bit too arrogant, but I think I certainly have a working model for how I conduct my life, and it may or may not be a correct worldview. I think my original inspiration came from just natural curiosity about science and math and biology. In particular, I would say that as I matured, it became more a feeling of trying to avoid the waste that occurs in the world where we have 6.5 billion minds. If you're a computer scientist, you can think of them as supercomputers. We have a love affair with the idea of the natural, even though we, as a species, are about as unnatural as you can imagine. My laboratory and my obsession is about safety in building/engineering safety. It's not just a matter of saying we want the world to be safer. We have to create technology. I don't like the argument that we are poorly adapted to our current environment. I mean, we did not evolve to sit all day and be exposed to giant amounts of really tasty food. We will have to make a decision as we go into new environments outside of Earth, whether we want to drag along with us all our pathogens. We can, or we can't. It's up to us. But I consider that part of genome engineering is how we interact with the huge part of our genome, which is our microbiome. What I really wanted was for everybody to have their genome and, ideally, everybody to share their genome. And for that, we needed to bring the price way down. Reversal of aging is high on my list of things to do, and not just because I'm getting old. If we can come up with a way of backing up my brain into another that I have in my backpack, we'll do it. People talk themselves out of things very easily. Things that they think are 1,000,000 years away or never are actually 4 years away. A few dozen changes to the genome of a modern elephant to give it subcutaneous fat, woolly hair, and sebaceous glands might suffice to create a variation that is functionally similar to the mammoth. Returning this keystone species to the tundras could stave off some effects of warming. Aside from bringing back extinct species, reanimation could help living ones by restoring lost genetic diversity. The Tasmanian devil, Acasarcophilus harrisi, is so inbred at this point that most species members can exchange tumor cells without rejection. Preventing ongoing extinction of elephants, rhinoceroses, and other threatened species is critically important. By all means, we must set priorities for allocating finite conservation resources. The best way to predict the future is to change it. I don't actually believe there's any such thing as privacy. Letting the tundra melt is the equivalent to burning all of the forests in all of the world, and their roots 2.5 times over. Our ancestors didn't need any genetic enhancements to be able to sit for 12 hours a day and eat fatty, sugary foods. But we need enhancements that handle that altered environment. If we go into space, we need enhancements that handle radiation and osteoporosis, or else we're dead. So what seems like an enhancement in one generation becomes life and death in another generation. I would argue that we're not limited by actual DNA. You can recreate the ancient DNA by looking at the genomes of existing animals. If you get very fine, accurate, and inexpensive control over your genome, you can fundamentally change the kind of organism you are. You are extending human capacity. Reversal is something that has been demonstrated in a number of different animals in a number of different ways. I think that's going to translate into larger animals of humans. We won't know until we try, but we are trying 65 different genes in different combinations to see if we can reproduce the aging reversal that we've seen in small animals. If we could take one of my skin cells and turn it into an embryo-like cell and turn it back into a skin cell, it has reset almost all of the developmental indications of age. I don't think it is about stalling or curing. It's about reversing. Curing gives you the impression of immortality. Stalling gives you the impression that you'll be 85 forever, which is not great. I'm a champion for personal differences. I have no sympathy for drug companies that can't figure out how to make personalized medicine. We could generalize that to all society should be much more personalized. Anytime you see somebody keeping a secret, that's symptomatic that something's wrong with the society around them. That means there's discrimination or worse. There are a few genetic traits that make people feel sorry for you, and there are some, like narcolepsy, at which people take personal offense unless you tell them in advance. As part of our dedication to safety engineering and biology, we're trying to get better at creating physically contained test systems to develop something that eventually will be so biologically contained that we won't need physical containment anymore. You should have personalized genomics, personalized physiology, personalized medicine, where each person's different and each body is an integrated whole. Most groups patent ways of using genetic discoveries as part of non-obvious diagnostic and therapeutic protocols and slightly or greatly altered genes. You can make pigs that are essentially much closer to being universal donors. If it works, their organs will be going into people like you and me. How do you get things out of your head, out of your lab, and into the world? If you're not part of the economic community, there's a chance you'll fall behind. I have a rule against saying something is impossible unless it violates laws of physics. A scenario is everyone takes gene therapy, not just curing rare diseases like cystic fibrosis, but diseases that everyone has like aging. Someone younger at heart should replace you, and that should be you. I'm willing to. I'm willing to become younger. I try to reinvent myself every few years anyway. I am 3.8% Neanderthal. One of my ancestors mated with a Neanderthal, and I am not embarrassed by that. We have lots of Neanderthal parts around the lab. We are creating Neanderthal cells. Let's say someone has a healthy, normal Neanderthal baby. Well then, everyone will want to have a Neanderthal kid. Were they super strong or super smart? Who knows? But there's one way to find out. Trees are essentially growing chairs. There are lots of primates that sit and sleep in them. The first thing you have to do is to sequence the Neanderthal genome, and that has actually been done. The next step would be to chop this genome up into, say, 10,000 chunks and then assemble all the chunks in a human stem cell, which would enable you to finally create a Neanderthal clone. If society becomes comfortable with cloning and sees value in true human diversity, then the whole Neanderthal creature itself could be cloned by a surrogate mother chimp or by an extremely adventurous female human. Neanderthals might think differently than we do. They could even be more intelligent than us. When the time comes to deal with an epidemic or getting off the planet, it's conceivable that their way of thinking could be beneficial. The trouble with lying and deceiving is that their efficiency depends entirely upon a clear notion of the truth that the liar and deceiver wishes to hide. This is the precept by which I have lived. Prepare for the worst, expect the best, and take what comes. The sad truth is that most evil is done by people who never make up their minds to be good or evil. Only the mob and the elite can be attracted by the momentum of totalitarianism itself. The masses have to be won by propaganda. Where all are guilty, no one is, confessions of collective guilt are the best possible safeguard against the discovery of culprits, and the very magnitude of the crime the best excuse for doing nothing. In order to go on living, one must try to escape the death involved in perfectionism. Only crime and the criminal, it is true, confront us with the perplexity of radical evil, but only the hypocrite is really rotten to the core. The ultimate end of human acts is eudaimonia, happiness in the sense of living well, which all men desire. All acts serve a different means chosen to arrive at it. Forgiveness is the key to action and freedom. There are no dangerous thoughts. Thinking itself is dangerous. The most radical revolutionary will become a conservative the day after the revolution. The defiance of established authority, religious and secular, social and political, as a worldwide phenomenon may well one day be accounted the outstanding event of the last decade. Death not merely ends life, it also bestows upon a silent completeness, snatched from the hazardous flux to which all things human are subject. Power and violence are opposites, where the one rules absolutely, the other is absent. Violence appears where power is in jeopardy, but left to its own course, it ends in power's disappearance. The earth is the very quintessence of the human condition. Under conditions of tyranny, it is far easier to act than to think. Action without a name, a who attached to it, is meaningless. Nothing we use or hear or touch can be expressed in words that equal what is given by the senses. Total loyalty is possible only when fidelity is emptied of all concrete content, from which changes of mind might naturally arise,